morning. I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee. I'm Lisa Bender. I chair the committee, and I'm joined by colleagues Councilmember Wright, Goodman, Andrew Johnson, and I think Councilmember Warsami will be joining us shortly. Council President is away on city business. We have 6 items on today's agenda. We will start with, why don't we start with the consent agenda, which are items 3 and 4. Item number 3 is amending the Code of Ordinances regarding single and two-family dwelling floor area ratio. And this was a little bit of an adjustment that came out of the Ward 13 conversation last year. Item number 4 is referral to staff amending the zoning code regarding high-density districts in single and two and family home areas. So this would be to allow for more flexibility for buildings to be converted back to single or two-family homes in high-density districts. And then item number 4 is referring to staff ordinance changes regarding to commercial murals. So I will move those 3 items, seeing if there's any discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Those carried. Returning to our public hearing items, item 1 and 2. Item number 1 is considering an appeal of a decision regarding the Depot Renaissance expansion. And I'm going to move to continue this item. I understand that staff from CPED and Public Works are still talking with the applicant about finding some kind of compromise with this discussion of the curb cuts along the pedestrian walkway. So I will move continuance of this for 1 cycle back to zoning and planning. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay, and that carries. Item number 2 for our public hearing is considering an appeal followed by the owner of 4609 28th Avenue. We saw this at Planning Commission a couple of weeks ago. We'll start with the staff presentation by Mr. Wittenberg.
Thank you, Chair Bender. Good morning, committee members. This is an appeal filed by Laura Gergich regarding the property located at 4609 28th Avenue South. The property includes an existing 4-unit building that is non-conforming in the R2B district. It's also located in the Shoreland district. It's approximately 470 feet east of Lake Hiawatha, and it's just over 300 feet north of Minnehaha Creek. On April 13th, the Planning Commission considered applications submitted by Ms. Gergich to add a 3rd floor as well as a rooftop deck. The applications, and here's a survey of the property. The applications included expansion of a non-conforming use, a conditional use permit to increase the maximum permitted height to allow 3-story rather than the maximum 2.5-story in the R2B and Shoreland overlay districts, a variance of the maximum floor area ratio from 0.5 to 0.87, and variances of both the north and south interior side yards in order to allow the addition to be built straight up along the existing side walls. The Planning Commission at that meeting adopted the staff recommendations and unanimously denied all of the applications. Here's a south side elevation of the proposal. In terms of height, there are a couple of things I'd like to point out for clarity. The top of the rooftop railing is where we are measuring the sort of highest point of the building, and that would be at 35 feet. The rooftop addition itself would extend to about 32 feet 6 inches, including the parapet. There's a bit of a nuance in the ordinance in that single and two-family homes that are allowed in the R2B district are subject to a slightly more stringent maximum permitted height, where if you were to build a new single-family home in the district, they'd be actually subject to a 28-foot height limit without requesting a variance. Other principal structures, including a non-conforming structure like this, are allowed a little bit more flexibility up to 35 feet in height. So the height issue is more the fact that it's an entire 3rd story rather than a half-story. Staff and the Planning Commission found that the proposed addition would not be compatible with nearby properties. It would be significantly taller than nearby structures, which are primarily 1 and 2 stories in height, including the immediately adjacent structures. It's notable that it appears the top floor would be significantly taller than each of the 1st or 2nd floors, so the scale of the addition seems a little overpowering. And in addition, CPED staff and the commission felt that the combination of both the floor area ratio variances and side yard variances would have a negative impact on adjacent properties. Ms. Gergich is both a property owner and architect. She did an excellent job of presenting her case at the Planning Commission. I'm sure she'll do make a compelling case again today. It's worth noting that she has obtained support from a number of her neighbors. She maybe will point out exactly which ones those have been. I'm not aware of any specific opposition that's been stated on the record. And at the neighborhood association meeting, there is a record in your packet of the neighborhood association having voted to support the applications. Finally, I think it's worth noting that the property, although 28th Avenue is a somewhat busier street and, if I'm not mistaken, a transit route, it's not located on any kind of commercial corridor or community corridor, and it's not immediately adjacent to any kind of land use feature like an activity center or neighborhood commercial node. So there isn't a clear policy basis from staff's perspective to support an intensification of the existing non-conforming use. With that, I can answer any questions.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Wittenberg. Was this a nonconformity because in the past it had higher zoning and now it has lower zoning, and that's what caused the nonconforming use?
That's correct. It would have been illegal when it was legal when it was built, but downzoned at some point after that. I don't know the exact year of the downzoning.
So the basic issue is the expansion of a nonconforming use, but at some time it would have been allowed because fourplexes were allowed in that zoning district, or the zoning district was downzoned and changed?
The downzoning would have brought more stringent regulations in terms of height, floor area, and that kind of thing.
So what happens if other people want to do this?
Well, of course, we, Councilmember, are going to look at each case on a case-by-case basis, but you have to be concerned about situations in which you're looking at very similar types of circumstances. So the issue of precedent isn't completely irrelevant, for sure.
So, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, Mr. Wittenberg, so we let them do this, it's all good, everyone likes it, and then the next neighbor says, I want to do it too. Are we looking at rezoning this area, or that's just not going to happen?
Chair Bender, Councilmember Goodman, I don't believe there would be a strong basis for upzoning the property unless we were to designate 28th as a community corridor. Certainly, one thing for us to consider is kind of whether other property owners think, well, that property owner received that approval as well. It seems like a good idea, get a better.
Well, that's what it looks like is going to happen next door. I mean, I don't know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the house next door. Soon a developer will want to buy that, then they'll want 4 units too.
It's not out of the question.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Do you know if any of the other units on this block have, like, what the unit count in the other buildings on this block are?
Chair Bender, I do not know the status of the number of single-family homes versus duplexes or other non-conforming uses on the block. I suspect maybe the applicant has a good handle on that, but I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, are there any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. We can start with the applicant.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Laura Gergich. I'm the applicant, and I live at 4609 28th Avenue South in unit number 4. As Mr. Wittenberg said, I'm an architect, and I'm committed to very high quality design, and I'm very committed to this neighborhood as well. All of my neighbors and all of my tenants support this application. There is no one who opposes it. The city rezoned the block, making my building non-compliant. My setbacks and my FAR don't meet the current zoning requirements, but they haven't changed since the building was built in 1929. So any expansion or alteration of this property would require these variances. It is the only fourplex on the block. There is one other non-compliant building. It's a triplex that is 2 doors to my south. All the other buildings on the block are duplexes There are 2 single-family homes on the far south side at the creek. I'm not increasing the number of dwelling units. It will remain 4 apartments. I'm simply updating the 2 upper-level units to make them 2-bedroom, 2-bath units so that a family could live there. The other 2 units will remain 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and they'll be affordable apartments. Owner occupancy of a rental property is a huge benefit to a neighborhood. Compliance doesn't always mean quality. The 2 duplexes to our north, 4601, has been vacant for 10 years under the same owner, and it has quite a long history of housing violations. 4605, right next to us, has 27 open housing violations from 2014, pardon me. So very recent housing violations. In older neighborhoods like this, the only way to add density is to allow slight improvements like this. Otherwise, it means tearing down homes. An increase in density on this block makes a lot of sense. 28th Street is a very busy street. In fact, we see 5,600 cars go past our front door every day. There's a bus stop 100 feet outside our block, or outside our door at 46th Street. The LRT station is a 9-minute walk down Minnehaha Creek. This is where density makes sense. Even the staff report that Ms. Dvorak made states that the project is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The city's not putting a penny into this, but I'm making a huge investment in my home and in the neighborhood because I want to stay. And just to reiterate, all of my neighbors and all of my tenants are in support of this. No one has opposed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, we'll allow folks to come on up, and please state your name and address for the record as you speak to this application.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Appel. I live at 4609 28th Avenue South, apartment 2. I'm a tenant in Laura's building. I feel that her design is thoughtful and in character with the neighborhood. And I strongly believe that it will not only add value to Laura's property, but to the entire neighborhood and enhance its appeal as well. And I fully support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Hello, my name is Tommy Furlow Jr. I live at 4609 28th Avenue, apartment 3. I currently stay in an apartment that will be part of the whole renovation. So if it happens, I will be moving out of my apartment, but I will be moving downstairs to one of the apartment stairs. So I will not be displaced out of the building. I think this is a very good project and an idea for the neighborhood itself. It'll bring a family there. Across the street from the neighborhood is an actual lake. It's Lake Hiawatha. So this would not be like disturbing the view of the neighborhood in any fashion whatsoever. It'll actually be opening it up to bring more people in the neighborhood, such as a family, and a kid can go over the street and play on the park. I like the neighborhood. I like Laura. She's an excellent landlord. There's nobody in the neighborhood who's against this idea. All I can say is I hope you guys go ahead and let her do this because it's something that'll be good for the neighborhood, it'll be good for the community, and it's good for the city itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Come on up.
Good morning, Council. My name's Sarah Green, and I live at 2428 30th Avenue South. Laura Gergich is a former neighbor of mine. She lived 2 houses to my south for 10 years. I'm here today just to express my support for the project and for Laura for her commitment that she has made to South Minneapolis. Laura has been very excited about this project, not because she's seeking to capitalize on the commitment and the investment that she wants to make just personally, but because it's a commitment to the community at large. She views, and I agree with her, that there is a need for some change in housing in South Minneapolis to the extent that the houses built at the turn of the last century have very small room sizes and only accommodate one individual. With her improvements, there would be, as you've heard from other speakers, an opportunity for 2 people or a family to live in these units, while Laura is very committed to keeping the cost of these units slightly below market value and accessible and affordable to people. And I know that she will stay there and continue to improve the property as she did when she lived on 30th Avenue South and made extensive improvements to the home that she owned there, as well as her prior home in South Minneapolis. I know Laura to be a very committed community member and to care about the greater good of the community and not only the benefit that she personally hopes to gain from improving the design of her building. And would also say that myself and my partner have an interest in moving into this home someday if these improvements are made, because it would accommodate our life much more readily than the units in the current state that they're in. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am happy to move to grant the appeal and to direct staff to prepare findings.
Thank you. Are there any comments? I will just say at the Planning Commission, I serve on the Planning Commission on behalf of the council. I think the commissioners were a bit torn about this to the point that Councilmember Goodman raised. Generally, we don't want to expand non-conforming uses, but every person who spoke at the Planning Commission hearing was in favor of this. The neighborhood organization unanimously voted to support it. And so it seems like something that the community wants to see. And so I think it's actually fairly moderate change to the building's exterior. So I'm happy to support this here. That is changing my vote. So I just wanted to speak to why I think that this is a pretty appropriate use of the existing building. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor of Councilmember Johnson's motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. That carries. And that item is completed. So now we just have one more item, which is a discussion presentation by our long-range planning staff of the ward profiles that they have completed.
Thank you, Chair Bender, and hello, council members. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction before we get to HYLA. Over the past year, the Long Range Planning Division has developed a business plan that fully defines and builds a strategy around our core functions, which include planning, urban design, public art, and research, including specific planning and procurement for data services and civic technology. This means that our staff in long range planning are now organized both geographically by sector and thematically by core function. At the beginning of the planning process, each core function was assigned a lead. And over the course of a year, we've identified products, services, and subscription opportunities for each of those core functions, as well as a 5-year outlook on goals, resources, communications, and measurements and outcomes. Today, you're going to hear from Hyla Mays, who is both our principal planner for the East Sector, as well as our core functional research lead. Hyla is here to introduce you to a new product of research in coordination with our urban design team. And each of you participated in this as well, our citywide and ward profiles. The mission of our research core function is to contribute to Minneapolis's goal of being a data-driven and results-oriented city. And it is in that spirit that these profiles have been created. They're a resource for council members, the mayor, and constituents who want to better understand the current cultural and demographic dynamics of a ward or consider opportunities that may reside there in the future, from capital projects to transit expansion to development opportunity. So we appreciate the opportunity to introduce you to this new product, which will reside on the city website and which will work with you to update annually. With that, I'll invite Hyla up to present the product.
Thank you again for making time in your agenda to talk about this. I'm pleased to be here to give you a little bit of an overview of the ward profiles and to talk a little bit more about the research function. As Trishti discussed, we have sort of been organizing our team by function and tried to get in more depth of the needs in these particular areas. The research function in particular has a few main components I'm going to go through briefly. One is, as we all are aware, we want to move more and more towards being a data-driven city. And that doesn't mean just having information, that means information that's timely, available, convenient, quick, and there when you need it. So the products we are developing are really aimed at making that happen. We know there's going to be a spectrum of different needs. Some people need something right now, something simple, something straightforward. Other people, including some of the constituents in the public, want to get their hands dirty. They want to dig in the information. They want to have the raw data and really do their own work. We really want to be able to accommodate the full spectrum of users, people who need things that are simple and straightforward, people who want to know all the details. And the efforts we have both through the Long Range Planning Division and in coordination with the many other departments who have data needs and functions in the city are aimed at doing just that. I'll talk a little bit about what we've accomplished to date. And this year, in terms of that, we have really been focusing on filling some data procurement needs, making sure that we have accessibility to the best information, not just locally, but nationally, in terms of trends and information shaping our city. We are continually building that to make sure that when we have a question, we are well prepared to answer it. And if we have a policy need, we can really drill down and get into the details as needed. This particular product that you're looking at today, the word profiles, is more towards the quick facts end of the spectrum. It, of course, has a general summary of information, not all the details. But again, that's part of the picture. Just to go very quickly of what's in here and the why. This actually, a quick question, this document started out as a very simple request or series of requests to people saying things like, why don't we know the population of our ward? Why can't we get that information simply and easily? We started out as a simple data spreadsheet and grew from there. We wanted to include good qualitative and quantitative data. One reason you see the layout is not just because we like pretty pictures, but because we think sometimes just the bare statistics about your ward don't tell the full story. I mean, it's really important to know the percentage of people of different races and incomes and ages, but that's not all there's there. So this is a combination of qualitative and quantitative information. Looking at, you have access to all the different profiles. What you're looking at here is an image from the citywide one that just shows some of the data that's available. Again, we're getting actually down to a very fine-grained level, even though this is high level, so all the data behind that is available as well. Adding to that sort of picture is some different elements that are also useful at this level. Since we are the planning division, we want to include a summary of the policy, both comprehensive plan and the many small area plans in our city, so that when people want to know what does the city have in the books to guide this area, there's a quick and straightforward place to get at least the basics, and then links to where we could find more information. And finally, sort of the spectrum of that. We get to the level of projects. This isn't the place to list every single possible thing that's ever happened and ever will happen in the ward, but just to say where are sort of the key focus areas, where are the priority places that we need to focus investments, where we're seeing a lot of growth, where we're seeing a lot of change, but where are we putting money in with capital projects, with city-led projects and investments, and the private sector. This map, which is not really readable at this scale, but you have access to it at your station, sort of tries to get that level of detail for each of the wards. Again, as soon as we look at this, we start asking questions and saying, well, what about this area? What about that area? What about other things? And that is why this document is not going to be static. As Trici's already alluded to, we will be working to update this regularly. There may be components that come in here that aren't in here now. But again, the idea is to get a lot of the major pieces of information you need at this level in one place. This, as we mentioned, is largely going to live online. We have not rolled it out fully to the public because we wanted to talk to you first, but we will try to have it available in an easy and dynamic format for everyone to use. And there will be much more to come in terms of other products. So again, thank you for having us, and I'll pause for questions.
Thank you. Are there questions? Councilmember Goodman.
I just have a comment and then a question. I think this is really great. And we've reviewed it in my office a number of times because we found, a little error here or there. And the neighborhoods have taken a look at it too. And that's how we found out one of the neighborhoods was missing from my ward, which had to have been kind of embarrassing for everyone. I'm wondering if we're going to be able to get hard copies of these. If so, how many hard copies? Can we pass them out to people? I mean, I think if you think about it, the people in my ward who would want to see this are not going to like spend 2 hours online scrolling through their computer. But if they had a hard copy, you know, they'd take it to the lake and look at it just like I did. So I'm just wondering what your plan is for distributing this. Is it on request, or they're going to be available? And is there a citywide one? I guess is there a compilation? That's what this one is. Okay.
The last question is the easiest. Yes, there's a citywide one, and it does have a similar format to the others. That's what I've been looking at, so I didn't have to pick a word favorite to focus on. To go back to that question, these are not the cheapest things to print, and we don't want to create the impression that we can print one for everybody in the city. So we can work with individual ward offices if there's interest in getting copies and figuring out how to do that. Because again, it's just a resource question, but we're very glad it's useful. And again, we realize in something like this, there are going to be little tweaks and errors. So if anyone sees any, let us know right away and we'll fix them. So,
Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to state that I concur with staff that pretty pictures really add something to the product.
Thank you. Any other comments? You know, I wanted to say, I think this is so valuable. And to me, just understanding the sort of geographic distribution of different issues within our city has so much potential. Like even if you look at the map of unemployment, for example, and you see the really stark geographic concentration of unemployment. I mean, it's something that we kind of know anecdotally, and certainly probably the council member of the wards that are most impacted knows, but for us to be able to start to then target programs, perhaps in coordination with our neighborhood organizations in those specific neighborhoods, I just think there's so much value. And then as we look to updating our comprehensive plan, I think taking this really data-driven approach will be helpful. It's striking to me that so much of our city is identified as urban neighborhood, and there's not really sort of a distinction between different types of urban neighborhoods, but perhaps growing neighborhoods or whatever, however you might distinguish different housing markets within the city. You can see through the maps of housing that our rental population is highly concentrated. And as we see higher pressure on our rental market, we understand then where people are probably at the most pressure for displacement. So I just think that just having this data mapped like this is just really valuable. And I appreciate the work that went into it. And I just sort of wanted to acknowledge too that you're doing all of this work again with your existing staff, and I think that that's a really, it's great to see that you're being able to use the sector planners in that way. But just wanted to sort of acknowledge that as well. So, seeing any other questions or comments, seeing none, I guess I'll move to receive and file. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, and that carries. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.